something that I think is, worth pondering is, why are we pressing a vinyl record? Especially in this day and age where it's a lot more work than it would be just to put it up on Spotify and call it a day.
Yeah, it's a great question because it's a real pain in the butt, if I may speak frankly.
Hey, be my guest.
But I do think it's almost just another artistic expression that we think is valuable. We went through, the process. Well, maybe I'll start even earlier. We wrote these songs inspired by old music that has a historical lineage that we want to tap into and extend, and that they made on, technology that existed in the past, and which gave it a certain sound. Mm-hmm. And so that's what motivated us to get in touch with Hunter and say, how can we take that stuff we liked, use some of that technology. I mean, we did end up using a computer eventually. It's inevitable. We're gonna, we're talking to people through the magic of the internet.
Yeah, it's definitely a hybrid process at this point for us.
But Hunter has all this cool stuff, including a tape machine that we track these songs through, that just gives it an inimitable sound, an unimitatable sound. Mm-hmm. And it would just seem like a shame to just plop it on as an MP3 on the internet with no fanfare.
Even a FLAC would not be enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's something about extending it all the way to that beautiful physical item of a vinyl record. There's just nothing like it, having that big piece of, well, could we call it wax? I guess it might be technically wax.
If you want to be informal, yeah, let's say it.
That black record with the label on it, and then you get that big paper cover with artwork on it. There's just nothing like it, especially when everything is invisible now, in a way. Mm-hmm. It's digital, it's on the internet. Physical things aren't quite as, commonplace as they used to be. You're not out there buying physical CDs and records the same way. They're more of an artistic piece, an artistic expression. And I think that's just what we're going for, to make this creative idea we have fully realized and something that'll hold up and last as long as we last, and probably beyond. It's just worthwhile to go that extra mile to make a real record.
I feel very similarly, and I also have really come to appreciate these old country records that when I actually pick up the album, when I find them, you can get anything on the internet, but I love when I go to a record store and I happen to find something I've been looking for years. Like, it's such a thrill. And looking at these LPs and seeing the back covers, you know the cover art because you look it up online, you see the cover art. You never see if it's a gatefold, you never see the inside. If there's liner notes, you never see the liner notes. You never see the backs of the records. You never see what they may have etched into the matrix of the actual record itself, or little things written. A lot of these guys had funny names for the different sides of the records.
Yeah, there's a lot of creativity.
This side
there's
and the other side,
dimensions.
all these little things that give the records so much more personality and depth. We can go on and on about, the warmth of a vinyl record. I mean, that's one thing. And I would say, if you don't even have a record player, if you just get this record and you listen to these songs digital, I would still say it's a different experience to see all the different aspects of what we're, putting together in this little package that you just wouldn't have access to, because when you put stuff online, especially through any of the mainstream platforms, like Apple Music, Spotify, everybody that, not to talk bad, if it weren't for them, I, would be about 42 cents poorer.
I know, yeah.
But there's no mechanism to see, just show me the back cover of the damn record. You can't do that online.
You really expect us to get the most out of something that's like this, you know? It's kind of crazy compared to what it used to be. So by doing something like this, you get such a personal connection, I guess. The item is unique to you. It exists. And it's almost like what we were saying a different time about the equipment we use and how there's a certain element of randomness or chaos and just uniqueness when you play a song and sing a song with this old gear on tape. it's never going to come out the same way twice. And it's kind of the same with a record. You know, each one is going to be individual. You have it, that's the record. You know, and like you're saying, you can look at it.
Yeah, and if all goes to plan, I mean, there will be things that we just won't be able to put online. It's gonna not. I'm not trying to sell it. I mean, I am trying to sell it, but I'm not trying to go, hey, you don't want to miss out. I'm not trying to create the FOMO, so to speak. No FOMO. But I'm really proud of how this is coming together and how we're creating a thing you can hold and look at that you can pull up the cover art, but that's not going to give you the full 360 experience. Or something like the songbook, you know? These physical items, it's not necessary. I love a lot of digital music. I listen to it all the time. I listen to YouTube music where I don't even see the cover art. I just, I'm listening to mixes. It's not, it's not impossible to enjoy music through modern means. I'm not someone who's stuck in the past or has any, painful nostalgia for a different time. But it's damn exciting to make a cool piece of art that you can hold in your hands. That's really all it boils down to for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it too. This isn't any kind of a nostalgic thing so much as it's one of the only ways that is still around that you can make a physical music thing. Whether or not you even listen to it, it's a physical form of music, and it might be the best one we have so far, and it might be the best one going forward. Sometimes I think about how, if someone just discovered this thing 200 years in the future, there would be a way to hear these songs.
Yeah.
Because they're literally punched into the material, Not to get too technical, but those vibrations we made will be just in those grooves of the record. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So someone could reverse engineer these songs long after we're gone and some other, other side of the world or even a different planet. They're on that disc, and I think that's just too cool to pass up.
Yeah, I mean, I've got records that are older than me 3 times over, and I've also got CDs that are maybe 10 years old that have already started to have disc rot. There's something to be said for it, and when you're talking about physical mediums, it's a special one.
Yeah.
It really has a certain longevity, and I can't wait to hear the songs on the damn record.
Well, me neither.
The first day we get in there, we spend, we arrived early afternoon, I believe, and went late into the night. We got up the next morning, and you weren't feeling the best, but it was the day where we really had to get up early and just spend all daylight working on this record.
Yeah. So we drove there. It was, 6-hour drive maybe? With some stops, and I was just downing coffee. I even enjoy a little smokeless nicotine sometimes, and I think I kind of just overdid it on the coffee and the nicotine on the ride there. I wasn't, we didn't do any illicit substances otherwise.
No, and we weren't, aside from the caffeine and the nicotine, there was no alcohol or anything.
We're just trying to stay peppy.
Yeah.
And anyway, we got a good night of sleep. Woke up, I think, around 7. I don't know. It seemed early, whatever time it was. And I had just this terrible headache. I really didn't feel well.
Yeah.
Just like my neck was sore, and like I felt pretty terrible for most of the day that we had to do all of the rest of the tracking. But it was really an exercise in discipline to just go, and we were working as fast as we could. What does this song need? Okay, we got piano on these 3 songs, so let's set up the mics, track the piano, and okay, now set up the amp, test the amp with the guitar, find the pedal to do the solo on this song. And it was just like one thing after another, and I'm pretty sure that in between takes sometimes I was just lying on the floor.
We actually tried to do a record there some number of years ago, and it just didn't work out. It just didn't come together.
I don't think any of us were ready yet.
No.
I'm glad we made it in. It felt like I was entering another world.
Yeah, especially going through the portal.
Yeah, there was
the tight hallways.
It was a subtle thing.
You
might have missed
to the studio. There's like a smell emanating from it.
Yeah, something that's hard to describe. It's like sulfur.
It's like rust. It's like the smell of a good cobweb.
Yeah.
No, as you get closer, you start to see some of the gear in the hallway and like the doors and I don't know. It is a portal you enter from the outside, and even in that building, as you get closer, the vibe changes and you do feel it.
It's like stepping into a past time.
Yeah.
But it's not contrived.
No.
It's just because Hunter really likes older things. This is a guy who rebuilds motorcycles, and he collects old recording equipment, which really resonates with what we're doing. All this old music that we appreciate and that we're trying to kind of work in the same tradition of, and even just the sound, literally just the sound of what we're doing, you can't quite get without going to that source material. C-Note was actually named, in parentheses, Song for James. James is a friend of ours who we've worked with in the past in different projects.
Yeah, I've cut some records with him.
He inspired the song. And C-Note, was another name for a $100 bill.
Yeah.
And one day I was in Chapter 1 Coffee here in Plattsburgh, and he walked in, caught my eye, and he came up, and he handed me a $100 bill. But it was so chewed up by his dog that it was useless. He had tried to go to the bank and get it restored, but there wasn't enough for them to give him a fresh $100 bill. So he walks up to me and he gives it to me and he says, "I'm giving this to you because I know you're going to write a song about it." And don't you know he was right, because by the time I left, I had sketched out essentially what is on the record of the lyrics.
I remember you sent it to me.
Even
pretty early on.
Kind of down to the music even, because I think that's partly how I write, is I try to get the flow of it with the words if I can. So before I left that day, I went over to James and said, "Well, I just wrote that song." And then he said, "Well, you got to name it C-Note. And it's in the key of C."
Yeah, of course.
And so there's, that was the main inspiration, and then I drew from another experience, which was us going to play a show with our other band, the Mountain Carol, in Jay, New York.
Oh, yeah.
At the interim Ausable Theater, and staying there all night and having quite a time.
Yeah, and we weren't even really guests. We just didn't leave.
Yeah. And so combining these two personal stories and then fictionalizing it a bit. For example, I don't have a dog, but a dog, factors heavily into it, inspired by James's story. But I kind of, that character has the dog and goes through the whole story. So, I think that speaks to the way I kind of write songs a lot of times, is I'll take some personal experiences and kind of push them to the extreme or externalize them and change them into a different kind of a story that still kind of gets at the same feelings or ideas, or possibly even synthesizes them into a new one. And that's the story of C-Note, or the Song for James.
Playing them out and seeing that the response was often just as positive to the songs we wrote as to some of the classics. I felt every time we added more and I saw that positive response, and to the point where we started getting people requesting our originals at our gigs. That's quite a thrill. I mean, we've played plenty of original music. It's not like, we've only ever played in cover bands or tribute bands or anything, but, we wanted to do a genre thing. We wanted to do something paying tribute to this music that we love, and to be able to put our own kind of contributions into this lineage of this particular strain of country, and to have audiences be receptive to that, especially audiences that really know their stuff. I mean, we have some people that come to our shows that are from Nashville or from these places where that music originates, and they go, and I sound like I'm making this up, but they go, "You're some of the most authentic country I've ever seen. You sound so good." I think part of it's that, we don't overdo it. We don't play like we're a rock and roll band necessarily. We play in the traditional style, and we write in the traditional style, though we call this music post-outlaw because I think we bring influences from, after the Outlaws have all kind of ridden off into the sunset forever.
Yeah.
Those influences that we bring to it, we're bringing it to a different place inevitably because we're not, we're not those guys.
We're constantly trying to find the balance of, we love, as the whole spectrum of music. We're music lovers. But I think there's just something about the outlaw and leading up to, you know, maybe the 80s or so with the Highwaymen. Up to that point is where we, you know, that middle 20th century region of music really pleases us the most, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think keeping that appreciation always close to our hearts and in our minds comes across to the people who also really connect with that music.
Yeah.
And that's maybe why we sound authentic, is because we're really not trying to do anything beyond that thing we really like. You know, that thing we really appreciate. We're not...
Yeah.
We don't have... You know, as much as we're pretty productive and we write songs, but we're actually, I don't know, if we're not that ambitious... we just really want to make good songs.
Yeah.
And based on this music that really gives us a thrill, like you said.
It was also really easy to just focus on playing the songs in a way where, you know, you and I have both done a fair share of recording together. And, you know, usually I'm running the deck. You know,
point.
and, you know, sometimes you're assisting in different ways, but you're never able to just fully immerse yourself in the performance necessarily. You know, there's a part of your mind that's always kind of pulled away when you're doing it all by yourself, unless you got a really great system automated, you know? And maybe these days they're, you know, inventing some kind of robot to do that for me. But until I make that leap, having someone like Hunter, who was a great engineer and just allowed us to sound good at no expense of our own. Do you know what I'm trying to say in terms of energy?
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't paid him yet, but there was a exchange, but it just being able to just play the songs and know that he was capturing us and doing us right felt so good. I've always loved this style of music, even when I was like a teenage punk rocker. I'd hear like Big River or Get Rhythm or something and go, this Johnny Cash guy's pretty good. And then I'd hear, like a Waylon tune or something, that, because people go, I like all music except for country. That's such a common sentiment. And you go, well, what do you think? Oh, well, I like, everyone likes Walk the Line or something. You go, well, you might like country music. You probably just didn't hear the country music that you connect with, because there's not one kind of country. I mean, it's such a broad genre.
A lot of different sounds and approaches, and I think that's one thing I've learned over the years, and that's influenced the writing of our songs, is that, there's so much to that, it's such a broad brush to say country music. It's like there's a lot that falls under that umbrella over decades, many different types of people and approaches and sounds. And I think that's something that we appreciate all of those and try to work them into what we're doing. I think you could say it like, how do we keep all that good stuff?
Yeah.
How do we tap into that good stuff and keep it there?
Well, what was key for me was the first time, because like I was saying, I've always enjoyed this style of music to a degree. And when I started picking up the records, I go, oh, these records are pretty good. And, my wife and I would listen to the music in the car, and we'd listen to, these Coe songs and these Hank Jr. songs. But the thing that really kind of locked me in, especially in how I wanted to tackle, writing and performing original music with you, was seeing those guys play live back in the day on these videos that, have been uploaded. Someone archiving these things, seeing, mid-70s Coe or Waylon or Merle or any of these guys in their element, like playing these really rock and country bands that don't sound like any other era of country music. They were playing just hot, It's crazy stuff that got me so excited about this kind of music in a different way. And then I realized, that's what I want to bring to the table, is like that type of energy and that type of country, that outlaw country. It's different, and the records are beautiful and they're iconic, but when you hear those guys play live and those bands and those layouts like they had, that really kind of kicked it into a different place for me mentally, thinking about the approach. working in a lot of different studios, working with a lot of different people, you don't always connect in the way that I think we connected during those sessions. Which I know it sounds a little cliche, it sounds a little goofy or contrived even, but I really feel like we all really got synced in. And the fact that we cut that record over the course of, I believe, 3 days.
Yeah, it was like 1 long day and 2 short days.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, first day I think we did like 12 hours straight or something like that. We on the whole, we got in
like
and
we
just
we
went to
arrived
work.
and we tracked almost everything. I think we did the basic track of everything.
Yeah.
The first night, and then the next day was reserved for overdubs,
doing
and
some
then the
electric guitar, some bass.
piano. We did as much. I think that was like a 10-hour day.
Yeah.
And then we tied up loose ends the next day.
Yeah.
So maybe 20 hours max.
Yeah.
Of start to finish.
But he was a real trooper, just kind of was completely locked in with us. I love when I go to a studio and they're there to work and just make the record and you just focus on that. And we didn't take breaks. We didn't,
Yeah, we were on it.
and the whole time he was sick as a dog.
I was just going to say that.
He was sweating, he was shivering. We had to go get him cold medicine and stuff. And
That was one of the breaks we did take, was to go to the pharmacy.
that's true. I was going, is this ethical? This guy, I mean, he was very sick.
Yeah.
And he put it aside.
He was committed.
He was
And I
so
think-
committed.
I think it was like his 10th day straight or something.
He had been recording. Yeah, he'd been in that
Doing other
studio
bands, other
for
projects.
a long time at that point, without breaks.
But, he never stopped giving it 100%, I would say.
Which was, I mean, inspiring and impressive, and also I'm just eternally grateful that even in a time of, physical agony,
Yeah.
and it didn't dull him. You know what I'm trying to say?
What I was going to say about the previous thing is he had a really great creative input
Yeah.
on various things. He wasn't afraid to say, let's try this, let's try that. Because, that's why we were there. We wanted his touch and his instinct. And, for example, maybe one song on our song, Sunset Riser, for the solo, he suggested, he had a lot of cool old guitars. And
Yeah.
the one I was using, the solo on that song was actually like a broken pickup or some weird wiring.
Oh, yeah.
And we ended up using this quirky, one-of-a-kind thing. Like, you flip to one setting and it sounded pretty normal, another setting sounded pretty normal, but in between there's this one where it's like shorting out or something. Mm-hmm. And he's like, try that sound. And we put it through a pedal into this amp, and that's what we ended up using for the solo on this song. And I don't think there's an easy way to ever replicate that the same way, and it sounds awesome.
So something that a lot of people might not know unless they're looking at the credits is that, writing duties are split pretty evenly between you and I. Now, you perform the songs, but, good half of the songs I've written, and I'll usually, with this very guitar, sit here in this room and I'll do a little demo. And, I can't really sing, and sometimes you're very patient with me where I'm kind of going, it's got to go up a little bit here. And when I write these songs, I've been a very confessional songwriter in the past to a degree, even though I've always kind of tried to go outside of myself and maybe talk about concepts that have influenced me or try to make a political or social statement in some kind of way. But for a lot of these songs for this band and for this record in particular, because, who knows where future records might go, but this collection of songs, the Songs of Yearning tracks, the songs that I wrote for this record, I'm usually trying to think of a character, and I'm telling a story. And it doesn't always have a moral, doesn't always have a ending or a happy ending or an ending at all. Sometimes it's just just this moment in time. Sometimes it's an attitude, sometimes it's an anecdote. But I'm always trying to think about the narrator of the song as a character, and it's been really rewarding for me as a songwriter to kind of be able to come up with these things and then work with you to bring those characters to life. And I'll give you direction about what I think this guy's attitude is, or what I think this guy's kind of mood or demeanor is. And especially I think over our years working together, it's a pretty smooth process in my opinion. I can't speak for how it feels for you, but I've felt very lucky to have someone who I can trust to play my songs in a way that I think sounds good, because I've been sometimes overprotective of my material with other bands, and not allowing someone to, allowing them to kind of take direction from me and try to go ahead and do that. But then also beyond that, I'll give you a song, you'll make little changes here and there to different phrasings, or maybe, I'll go, I got 2 verses, I need a 3rd verse. And it's felt really good to collaborate on those things, because I just have a lot of trust in this band with you. It feels like we're kind of very tuned in to the same frequency, and so working collaboratively on a song, whereas I think I've also, worked on some of your songs in a similar way, it doesn't feel like I got any anxiety about, he's gonna change the song and not get it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. And it's all true. I mean, it's definitely important to put out there, and I think we both try as much as we can to make it clear that it is pretty much 50-50 songwriting.
Yeah.
Again, I get all the credit because I'm singing them and such, but yeah, you've got what I would definitely probably classify as character study songs, if I were to like try and analyze it, which I really enjoy. And another thing on the topic you just said is that you've told me that you don't have a big history of collaborating on songwriting.
No.
Which was surprising, because I feel like it is very smooth. And I mean, I, on the other hand, that's kind of my primary thing. I really like collaborating on songwriting, and I historically have found it hard to write a song from scratch. That's something I had to work on and get better at. But I really enjoy collaborating and seeing what someone's going for and trying to realize that without letting my ego try to take over. It's just seeing, I see what you're going for. Let's make that as real as it can be. And so yeah, I mean, I've kind of felt very similarly. It's easy. I mean, sometimes in the moment, trying to interpret what you want is sometimes smoother than other times. But I do think that we've gotten better at it as we've practiced at that.
Yeah, well, and it's also, you're taking a very abstract thing. I might say this guy is a tired dummy.
Yeah,
Sing it like a tired dummy.
Well, that's what I really like too. And I've described like my role, as I guess maybe any singer of any song, but this is how I look at it for us, is I am basically acting on pitch. I see singing these songs as being an actor in a way, maybe more than anything, because I'm trying to portray someone who is not me, who is a character who has feelings, motivations in a certain story, in a certain situation or context, and trying to get into that mindset, and possibly changing my voice to suit that.
Yeah.
And doing that process of interpretation with you, I would say, has helped me grow as a singer too, and particularly in how I express the content, the lyrical and narrative content of our songs, versus just trying to sing the right notes, which was hard enough to begin with when we started the band.
Yeah, because I got a melody in my mind, but I can't write it out and I can't sing it.
Yeah.
But I'll know when you get it.
And there's times where I've had to sort of read between the lines of your demos, and maybe we could even fly one in.
Yeah, we'll do a little
for
A-B.
reference.
But first I wanna have one more beer. I won't shed no tears. Won't let the memories get me down. Then I'll have two.
Alright, I'll have a few more beers. You won't see no crying here. I'll never let no woman bring me down.
It's really exciting to have a sort of realized guy. It's usually a guy that I'm having to step in the shoes of and portray in a way. And
Yeah.
I really to me, it's always amusing because so often the guy in question is a loser of some kind.
Yeah.
You know, and not to say that as like he's unsympathetic. He's often a sympathetic guy, but he's down on his luck. But I enjoy those stories and having to tell those stories because we can all relate with that too.
And I don't know how much it comes across, but you know, for us when we're working on these songs, it's very funny. You know, we're making each other laugh a lot of the time with lyrics and concepts, and I think, you know, there's a degree of humor to all these songs, even the ones that seem like they might be downers or characters are really down on their luck or really, you know, them's the breaks kind of moments in these guys' lives. It is supposed to be something you can laugh at and something you can hopefully laugh with if you relate to it and you can kind of see the humor in these situations. And the thing that I really enjoy that I've been a little scared of, you know, as we put these songs out there to people, you know, it's so common to think that the guy singing the song is talking about himself, and that's how he really feels. And we got a lot of guys on this particular record who are not good guys.
Yeah.
And they're doing bad stuff, and that's not necessarily an endorsement of those actions. It's just telling a story. But, you know, especially when there's a certain amount of conviction in the performance of those songs, it's very easy to forget that you're basically watching a little movie when you put this record on. You know, this isn't real life.
Yeah, and I think I keep myself as blissfully unaware of that as I can because I just enjoy the acting part.
Yeah.
You know? And unfortunately, that is true. People tend to take things confessionally.
Yeah.
Which is not to say, you know, I think I tend to be more inspired by certain strong emotional feelings and exaggerate them more so than telling a story. But I think we're both capable of both of these.
Oh, yeah.
You know, a more confessional, emotional style versus a more disconnected sort of creating a character outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
As representing what it means to be a human being. So anyway, if you hear me say something offensive, it's not me.
Yeah.
I guess is the moral of the story. It's some jerk that I'm trying to impersonate.
And don't
When
we
it
all
comes
know
down
a
to
jerk,
it.
you know?
You know, and we can all be jerks as well. I think
true.
maybe that's something to take away is, we sometimes we relate a little too much to jerks, and we don't like that. Sunset Riser is a song that you kind of wrote the first version of.
Yeah, well, we also moonlight sometimes as hip-hop artists, and I wrote a song called Sunset Riders with my partner Dust about a classic Konami arcade game called Sunset Riders. And the beat has these horns, and it kind of felt to me kind of like something like Ring of Fire. And I thought it'd be fun if you came in and you sang the hook on that song, and the idea would be we're sampling a song that doesn't exist for the hook of this hip-hop song.
Yeah, it kind of created a fake country song that you would be taking the chorus from for your hip-hop song.
Yeah. And I thought, hey, it'd be fun if you then took that and wrote the rest of the song, which you almost did, but you interpolated.
Kind of interpolated. I don't know really what made me make that choice, but I changed the word for whatever reason.
From Rider to Riser.
To Riser. Maybe by mistake, or...
It's probably your love of Paul Reiser.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Mad About You.
Mad About Shoe. Anyway. Where was I going with that?
Sunset riser,
Yeah, well, it is just a funny idea to work in reverse, almost, to write a song based on a sample. Rather, I can't think of another example of that happening in popular music.
No, it was kind of like a fake past influencing future events somehow, you know, but also influencing a fake past event.
Yeah.
It's a very funny thing to talk about the time of it.
But I took that chorus, which is really good and really catchy, so nice job.
Thank you.
But I also pitched it up because when we did the hip-hop version, the note was a lot lower. And, you know, I do have a low voice, but I try to get it up into a range that is more of a, I guess you could say, like, I think Big Iron or El Paso by Marty Robbins. That kind of, like, croonery high note that comes across as a high note, whereas in the hip-hop version it didn't so much. And then, you know, I just kind of, the rest really fell into place pretty quickly. Just a song about making music and having fun, drinking.
Yeah.
Because it's true. I like to write happy songs if I can. There's a lot of dark songs and a lot of, like, sad songs. One thing I like about the music we make is it can be fun.
Yeah.
It can be funny. And it can be about having a good time. And so this song, it almost reminds me of something like The Bare Necessities. Something about it, you know?
Yeah.
This, you know, wherever I roam, I think I even say something in there. Where, you know, we're just doing what we love. Playing in bars, music's high and spirits high. Wherever we go, we can find that. And we stay up late and we get up late sometimes. And that's just kind of celebrating the life of a musician, I guess.
Yeah. I like to get up early and go to bed early, but I still can relate to the message of the song.
Yeah, well, we're not getting any younger, so.
Whenever I'm online, I see a cool artist, I just put them in a little folder. I go, I hope that one day I can find a reason to commission them.
Yeah, and you're good at this. You know, oftentimes when we're doing a project together, whatever it is, you'll say, hey, how about this guy? And you'll send me an Instagram page, and I'm like, I love it.
That's good to hear.
That's usually the case.
Oh, I have good taste. What do you want?
And it saves me the time of having to find that stuff myself. And
Yeah.
Ricardo Diseño
Yeah.
is one of those people.
Yeah, I saw his stuff, and it had such a distinct style and texture. Like, I feel like I can, like, see, like, an actual texture to his work that was very consistent. It's almost like, it reminds me of, like, old motorcycle art a little bit in some ways, like, with the way it's kind of airbrushed looking sometimes, and he has these, like, really saturated palettes that give it a kind of like a 70s kind of vibe in some ways.
Yeah,
and
totally.
He also has, like, a lot of sexuality and violence in his work in different ways, which I thought was, like, a cool thing to try to tap into, because, you know, this outlaw kind of country, you know, we don't talk about it a lot, but a lot of the songs are about making love and fighting and
drinking
and bad behavior and or killing or dying. I mean,
I think we do talk about it.
I mean, the songs you talk about, but it's like, it's not, you know,
right.
it doesn't, it's not what the people always immediately equate with country music lyrics, you know? A lot of it, you know, the joke is, oh, my truck broke down, my dog died, my girl ran away. And it's like, yeah, okay, I mean, that stuff does exist, but a lot of these songs are about, you know, being a gunfighter or something, you know?
And doing wrong and wishing you were doing right.
Yeah. Hey, let's write that one down.
Hey, well, I think Merle Haggard already did.
I've never heard of him. Yeah, but I was really honored that we hit him up. He goes, what's your budget? We give him a number. He goes, I'll do it. And totally came through with very little direction. We told him, like, the vibe of the songs, and he listened to the record, and we wanted something that felt masculine but also had, like, some kind of sensitivity to it, because I think that's, like, a big part of the outlaw, you know, characters in these songs is, like, they are trying to be tough guys. They're trying to be, you know, a type of man, you know, like this archetype of, like, what some people think this is what a man is, but they're always kind of at odds with their inability to completely fulfill that archetype. And there's a certain, like, sort of vulnerability, I'll say, that is often being, you know, kind of protected by this rough exterior. But a lot of the outlaws, if you listen, I mean, especially someone like David Allan Coe, like his poetry, you know, his stuff can get very, you know, vulnerable emotionally. And there's that kind of thing where it's like, these are tough, fighting, drinking kind of guys, but there's also this, like, really sensitive, soft side to them.
That's not highlighted as much, but it's integral to the whole thing.
And we wanted an image that could kind of, you know, communicate that to some degree.
Yeah, and I think he succeeded. And I mean, it'd be interesting to find examples on other album covers of that same kind of thing, because it's not all, you know, we've got some LPs over here. We've got David Allan Coe on a motorcycle. We've got Marty Robbins in costume with his 6-shooter. But like you said, David Allan Coe wrote "Would You Lay With Me in a Field of Stone," and Waylon has all kinds of weepy kind of numbers, and so does Hank Jr. And these are all guys who are also known for their, you know, just larger than life kind of party animal thing. But I think that's something that is almost left behind when people think of outlaw country in the modern day. A lot is made of the machismo.
Yeah, it's like 6 shooters and cocaine, and it's like, all right, I mean, that's part of it, but
or they go too far to the other side of self-pitying and
true.
You know, like, too sad. I mean, we don't have to get too deep into that, but finding the balance of those two elements, that I think is the magic of what we like about these songs and this outlaw country tradition. And yeah, I think Ricardo really encapsulated everything that we're going for, between the retro kind of styling in a modern way, with sensitivity and with kind of flair and confidence. He did great.
Yeah, he sent us a few rough sketches. We picked one that we go, you know, that's the direction, keep going. They were all pretty similar. You know, he was pretty much 75-80% there from the first draft. And it felt really good, like, again, just as much as we connected with Hunter and just were able to just get good work done together real quick. Working with him, giving him some basic feedback on his thing, and then coming back to us. I think it was 2 exchanges. The first draft, second draft, and then final. And I couldn't ask him to change a thing. It was too perfect.
Yeah, it was quick and painless, and just bold and beautiful. It's a nice strong orange, which I think is going to look great on a big LP cover. Yeah, I'm excited.
Suitable for framing.
Suitable for framing. There might even be some stickers and posters in the works for people who really like it.
I wouldn't count on it. I was doing a Thursday night concert series at a local bar, which will remain unnamed. No, it's the Monopole. And you messaged me, and you said you got this idea, Cash Journey. And you didn't iterate on what it was. And I thought that it was maybe something about kind of like a, you know, like a Sigma grind mindset. And I would have never expected that, no, you were going to play Johnny Cash covers.
Yes. That does pretty much sum it up. And that was the first real show.
I think you did a solo gig.
It was, well, our good friend and bandmate in a different band, Bruce Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
He was playing drums for the first half of the night, and then it became a solo thing. And I only had enough, I might have had 2.5 hours, and it was a 3-hour engagement. But I was worried I wouldn't be able to do enough, and I had asked you to play Neil Diamond.
Oh, yeah.
And you spent a lot of time preparing, and then in the...
I hated this.
I know, and I still feel bad about it. Because I was like, you know, and I was like, oh, don't, you know what? Don't worry about doing that. Because I thought I was burdening you by...
Pretty sure, like, you told me that day or something.
Yeah. It was very unprofessional.
As
I regret it.
Done a lot of prep where I actually have a notebook where I made all these diagrams and everything and learned all these songs.
Anyway, so that I feel like I've grown a lot since then. And you've helped me do that. So anyway, that was the beginning of the band. Was only Johnny Cash.
Yep.
Probably had 18 Johnny Cash covers.
Then by 2018 is when something happened. I don't remember the exact timeline now. But you asked me to play with you, or maybe I just forced myself into the situation. It's hard to say. But, we had been playing in a band together previously, like with the Mountain Carol. You and I were used to gigging, and we had also done some stuff with the Plattsburgh home team at that point. We eventually, in 2018, started playing officially together as Cash Journey as this duo. Mm-hmm. We had some good shows, but it was all Johnny Cash covers, and we learned a lot of them. And I think initially, I remember pushing for some of this outlaw stuff, and you didn't warm up to it initially. You weren't, against it, but it didn't come together.
Yeah, it took time, and I mean, there's a lot I could say, and one of them is I started doing the Johnny Cash stuff because it was some of the only material I felt confident singing, because my voice had not developed. I was still a pretty mediocre singer, to sometimes even a bad singer.
Hey, you're not going to hear any argument from me.
and part of the limitations and my resistance at the time to doing Waylon or Hank Jr. or any of these other outlaw things, aside from the fact that I wasn't as familiar as I am now, I'm sorry to say, but I literally couldn't sing it. It was far beyond my range and my expressive ability at the time. So, in the time of like, okay, let's try this, let's try that, because we'd also get requests for classics that weren't in the repertoire.
No, that was kind of a nudge to go, well, if we're doing this, for the people, to entertain the people, and of course, with that comes alcohol and money, but to say, oh, you're doing all these Johnny Cash tunes, can you play me a Waylon song? And we're like, no.
Yeah, and it keeps me up every time I can't make a request come true. But the core of what we do, even now, aside from all of the songs we've written, the core of what we do was basically taken from crowd requests. So a lot of those classic songs are there because someone wanted to hear them. And eventually, we kind of started to feel not gratified with our creativity.
Yeah, because
we were kind of basically just seen as a tribute band.
Yeah, well, we were, and that's all we were doing was playing these covers. And the covers, it did grow, expanded from just Cash. We started doing Waylon, Co, and the rest.
And the boys.
But there was also a long time where I, was no longer really in the band.
Yeah.
You played a couple gigs with another drummer named Ralph.
At one point, I did a show with my open mic friends.
Yeah.
Chris Shacklet and Colin Ferguson in a very rare trio performance. We came to a head, and I basically came to you and said, what are we doing? What am I doing? And that's really when the idea was hatched to take it to the next level and create our own songs. Because I think you had already started doing that.
Yeah.
I think you were the first one to write some original material in this context of country music and outlaw country tradition.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the turning point was. I said, all right, let's get reborn as a new idea. Keep all those old songs, but we'll add to them with our original music.
And that's when we kind of decided, all right, it's Austin and the In-Laws was the name that you pitched to me, and I'd like to tell people it's a family band. Your mother has played bass with us.
It's true.
And, your sister drives me to the shows. And we'll often run the merch table.
It took a while for it to catch on.
Well, that's the thing I wanted to say was, when we started putting in some of these originals, one, it took a little time to get the confidence to think these songs were, smacking right. Because some of the songs that we even put on this record were written right at the inception of this process. Some of them are from a few months or even years later, but it took a little time to get it feeling like, okay, we're doing these songs, and even then, we'd only put, maybe if we're playing a 3-hour show, 4 or 5 originals in the set.
Yeah.
It was really minimal. It was really, really minimal, and every year we put in a little more and a little more, to the point where we've done a few shows now where we've only played original material.
I think I've played maybe an hour of only doing songs we've written. And that doesn't happen all the time because often we are playing longer sets of 2 to 3 hours. At the Monopole, the longest one we ever did was 5, I remember.
5 with no breaks.
With no breaks.
Yeah, a real marathon.
True insanity.
True insanity, but hey, I mean, how many bands can say they played at the Monopole 5 hours, no breaks? as a two-piece.
As two guys.
All right, and we weren't doing any of this, 90-minute jam sesh kind of stuff you might see at a bar like that.
Yeah, probably sang 150 songs that night.
God.
Anyway, people still kind of saw us as a Johnny Cash tribute band for a year or two.
Yeah, it took a little time to get the new name in people's minds.
But persevering, saying, hey, we're more than that.
Yeah.
We still love that stuff, and it's an inspiration. But we've written a lot of music that we're proud of, and we're looking to keep being creative and be our own thing. I can't remember exactly if it was about making it musical, but Shel Silverstein came up with me and my brother-in-law, and he recommended my other brother-in-law, and he recommended I check out a poem by Shel Silverstein called "The Perfect High." Mm-hmm. And I think I might have showed him a song by Bobby Bear called "The Winner." Now, if you don't know, Shel Silverstein, well known for books like Where the Sidewalk Ends and A Light in the Attic, I believe it's called. Mm-hmm. He was a country music singer and songwriter and wrote such famous songs as A Boy Named Sue.
Yeah.
So, behind the scenes, he was pretty active in the country music community, including the outlaw guys that we like to listen to, and he wrote a lot of those songs. So, I checked out this poem, The Perfect High, very funny, and I thought, what would be a cool idea would be to kind of go the direction of A Boy Named Sue, or The Winner, and put Shel Silverstein's words, put his words to music. And so, it was not easy, actually.
Yeah.
It took a lot of revisions to try and find a melody. I started with one, and then I was like, that's very repetitive, because it ends up being a very long song.
Yeah, it's our longest recording, I think we'll ever do.
It's definitely, maybe the medley we did on the live CD could be longer. I haven't checked that. But this is, approximately 7 minutes, and it was longer before we cut it down. But it's a long story about a boy named Gimme Some Roy who looks for the perfect high, and there's some other characters, and Boba Fats, who's a sage who advises him on how to find the perfect high, and there's the narrator. So eventually figuring out a way, how can we tell this poem in a way that's fun to listen to for a long time, incorporating different musical elements. And I don't know, I'm pretty happy with what we came out with. And I'm also satisfied to say, that's another thing to pay tribute in a creative way to this outlaw thing. Shel was an important guy to Johnny Cash and to
Coe, to a lot of these guys.
Yeah, exactly. And so, he lives on through this. And this is our way of trying to keep that alive and that spirit alive and get in touch with what motivated a lot of this music.
Another thing that I really like about this recording and this song in particular, we do dip into this a little bit on the main album, but I'd say this is a more animated example of the kind of comedy songs that a lot of these guys do. It was Shel Silverstein that pushed David Allan Coe to release his comedy records, and Everybody Loves a Nut is but that's the Johnny Cash record.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
We've had a few requests from that album, which it's almost an album of children's songs in a way.
I think that's the concept, is this children's songs, which oftentimes have a very humorous bent to them.
And so I feel like, that's another part of my favorite, things about these country guys, the outlaw guys, is they have a lot of humor in their songs at times. They're not afraid to go there. They're not afraid to be silly and to have fun with a jokey song. And it doesn't, sometimes you hear novelty music and it's a little,
Right, it's called just novelty for a reason.
Right.
It's sometimes throwaway or not memorable.
Right.
It doesn't have replay value.
But a funny song doesn't need to be a novelty song.
Right.
Music can be funny and still be great art and great to listen to. And I hope that this song fits those two criteria.
Yeah, it's hard, especially I think in just modern culture, I guess, because people want you to be one certain way, and if you're funny, you're kind of not coming back.
Yeah.
It's very hard to break through that. But that is one reason I really like country music overall, and hip-hop actually, is you're allowed to be funny, and it doesn't ruin the thing you're doing.
It's very hard to be funny in heavy metal or anything like that,
It takes away the gravitas. But yeah, it's true. This is, I would say, the goofiest thing we've recorded so far as a band.
Yeah.
And yeah, it'll probably be hard to beat.
Oh, that's all right.
But I hope anyone who gets to hear it enjoys it, and enjoys it more than once, perhaps.
So one cool thing that we're doing to kind of accompany the release of this album is we are producing a songbook so that people can read and play along and play the songs themselves. And I've always been really into that sort of idea. You know, I've had tons of music books over the year. When I was first learning guitar, I probably had like a Weezer book or something, you know, and was learning these songs. And I've always been so fascinated by the idea that you can have an album in a book and play along to it. I'm sure you've had some similar experiences that kind of, you know, motivated us to do that. Do you feel like you
Yeah, definitely.
become, you know?
I mean, so much of my musical education, I mean, I did, you know, I had music classes in school and everything, but so much of my time was spent at home, whether in a book or I would use, you know, the internet and find guitar tabs and learn my favorite songs.
Realize that
But-
nobody knew how to tab out a song
Yeah, no, you
correctly.
eventually get good enough you can catch other people's mistakes, but having that, you know, that resource was so important to learning the songs that I wanted to play and developing my own style, you know, like I suppose maybe eventually with trial and error I could have figured some stuff out, but having that little, almost a shortcut to get really acquainted with what's going on in those songs I enjoyed, that gave me the inspiration. You know, there's a lot of Chet Atkins songs I learned through tabs I found on the internet. And that influenced my playing style today because I had, you know, it might not have been perfect, but a lot of them were pretty good. And I got to just see, oh, those are the notes. That's what I got to accomplish. Often it was way beyond my level at the time, but it gave me something to work toward and eventually became a huge part of my style. And so I guess I'm hoping that by paying it forward a little bit, we keep it pretty simple just because we really want to make it accessible.
Yeah.
And our songs aren't that complicated. But I hope that other people can learn our songs and use that as inspiration to make their own too, because that's partly maybe the philosophy of this band.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're taking from a sort of songbook in a way, you know, this great kind of canon of country music. And there's something really interesting to me about having the album exist outside of the recording, you know? And someone can have their own version of that album that they play themselves. And I think that's really, really cool. It can kind of outlive the album itself in a lot of ways. Like, so much music, especially in this country music tradition, was passed down orally or, you know, through, you know,
Yeah,
just...
like sheet music. I mean, we don't think about it a lot, but sheet music used to be the only way you could transport music long distances and play songs you've never heard before.
And all the roots of country music are in that, you know, in America, you know, that style of music. It predates recording technology.
Yeah. It's so, we're kind of working in that tradition. We recorded it through an old tape machine.
Yeah, a tape machine
Like
with a
actual
great
tape.
lineage.
That's true. Oh my God, I almost forgot about that.
Yeah.
It was a tape machine that once belonged to the great Les Paul.
And it passed through the great Vincent Gallo as well.
Yes. Don't look too closely into who that is.
No, but having the Les Paul kind of, some of his moon dust was still present. And I felt
my
like
gosh.
I, you know.
Man, it was a new old stock. The tape heads, if I remember right. Not to get too technical here, but some of the pieces of this tape machine that we used were never used from the inventory of the great Les Paul, you know, the guy who, by all mainstream accounts, invented the solid body electric guitar and was very well known as a player, as a inventor, and, you know, a studio whiz.
Yeah.
So we got to use that machine to track these songs. That's pretty special.
Even though we both share songwriting duties, when it actually comes to, you know, playing the songs on the record, I play just the drums. You know, for the most part, I played drums on every song. Played the same kit. I usually don't have a cymbal, but I think I used a cymbal on this record to kind of give it a little bit of a, a little different sound at a few points.
Did you bring that big one
I
that
did.
we like? Okay,
yeah.
we got a cymbal from our friend Ryan Hayden. A very big ride cymbal.
Yeah.
And that found its way onto this record. It's one of the best sounding ones I've ever heard.
Such a nice cymbal. It was a, kind of, I think, a signature part of my drum sound for the Mountain Carol, and it felt really cool to bring that over into this record.
Yeah, and if you see us live, usually you're not playing that.
No.
It sounded good on the record.
Yeah.
And then I ended up playing, I brought several guitars.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a Telecaster that basically the only original part remaining is the body of the guitar. Everything else been swapped out because I do that a lot. Maybe that's something me and Hunter have in common, is we like to rebuild our little things that we use. Him with motorcycles, me with guitars. And then speaking of Hunter, he had a collection of stuff that you don't see every day.
Yeah, he had some really fun toys.
Almost like his guitar and bass collection is kind of like what you think of as, you call them like pawn shop guitars. Some on the cheaper side, like Harmony, which, was kind of a budget guitar back in the day, and all the way up to kind of a nicer brand historically, which is Hagstrom, which I just remembered. That's one that I really took a liking to, that I think we used. I can't really remember the track we used it on right now. He might remember. But it's a white Hagstrom guitar he got that had cigarette burns. It looked like it had been played for like 30 years straight.
Yeah.
Like literally without stopping or sleeping or anything. It was just really worn in, and I think it was one of his favorites too. But it was... I remember one we used it on was L'Oreal. For when I go...
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. I remember using that guitar on that song. It's got some really cool sounds, really just juicy sounds. And, there was one thing, though, I had trouble with. And it wasn't a guitar, it wasn't a bass or a piano.
No.
It was, I guess you could call it a woodwind or maybe a percussion instrument for your song Trains that we recorded. It took far too long and too many takes. I just couldn't blow the train whistle right. And I think that's where we called you in.
I came in, I did a very straightforward choo-choo, which you will hear on the record, but it needed a certain cadence for the song, but also to mimic a classic choo-choo train noise.
Yeah.
And I do remember, you were just not hitting it.
I might have been blowing too hard. I really couldn't tell you. And if I knew, I probably would have done it.
And it brought me back to my childhood. I don't know if you had a train whistle as a kid.
Oh, yes.
Oh, well, I had
probably
several.
Didn't practice enough.
I practiced every day. I blew on that little train whistle till my cheeks were red.
But, you went into that tracking room after I'd given up, and you did it, I think, in the first take.
Yeah.
So, that is Matt Hall on the train whistle, in addition to the drum kit.
I wish upon the trains as they pass by, they take my thoughts along. Oh, the trains. I wish upon the trains, I cast my will upon them with this song.
And it was really cool being in that room, the live room that we were in, surrounded by all the gear, and then hearing the tape machine click on and the whir, the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's,
and having to rewind every time. That's just, how they used to do it all the time.
Yeah. And doing so much of the record live together. Obviously we did some overdubs, but the core of the record, we did every song. We played it right there, playing on some nice vintage gear. That drum kit, the bass drum was a mile wide.
It was huge, and it sounded huge.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
Big drums.
This really solidified how much I love playing songs together. Because a lot of times now, it's so easy to just do it layer by layer by layer, but to track, we did drums and guitar and singing for 9 out of 10 songs. I actually forgot to sing on one of the songs, and then did it later. But even then, I'm glad it worked out that way, because that song sounded better that way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it
definitely has a different
coincidence.
Vibe to the performance for that one track.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I'm sorry, what were you saying to me?
I was saying, what was it like working with Hunter?
I've been personally wanting to work with Hunter for many years, ever since he did our buddy Sam Egan's record.
You wanted to do that long as well?
Oh yeah, even longer to a degree, because I had heard about Hunter's work through Sam, and I heard about the Business District, and I had heard some of the records that came out of it, but until I actually, I went there with Sam for some of those sessions, and you did as well at a different time and later sessions for the same record. I go, right, well, I'm sold. I gotta bring the band here.
Yeah, I remember one point when we went to record this album, I was like, Hunter, do you remember me saying this when it was 6 years previous with Sam? I said, this makes me want to write songs to record here. And he's like, I remember you saying that. And then all that time passed, and it finally came true.
Maybe around 2013, I was playing music and traveling with a person, and I needed songs that were different from the songs I was normally writing at that time. The kind of shows we were playing, we were gonna start playing as a duo, me and this other person here, who, I'm not trying to be secretive, they just, the whole backstory isn't relevant to this particular story, but I've traveled and played music with a bunch of different people. You were one of those people, and I think our connection has grown from that experience, rooted in that, but I'm sure you have the same experience. You play music with different people, and you play different material depending on who you're playing with,
Oh yeah, all the time.
And I needed some material that would fit with this particular player. And so a lot of the songs I was writing were more rooted in punk and hardcore, and were not really, maybe a little too abrasive for the shows we were having booked. So I go, I gotta write some songs for normal people.
Yeah.
So I tried to write a song that seemed like what a normal guy would do.
So it's, from the outside looking in, I would say it's a melodic.
Yeah.
It's got a verse, chorus kind of a structure.
Very traditional structure.
It feels like a traditional song.
It does.
The lyric is maybe kind of simple, you could say.
Oh, yeah.
Very straightforward, but it's catchy.
Straightforward, catchy, and I started playing the song on that tour, and people really liked it. It really connected with people. I go, I think I may have written a pretty good song here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, go forward in time, I hadn't played guitar or played shows in a long time at that point when we started working on Austin the In-Laws, but we were talking about, pulling out some original material. I go, I got a few songs from back in the day that I never really got to, do more than just play out a couple times. And I never recorded them. I never did anything proper to really, cinch them up and go, hey, you can hear this song on a record, or I feel like here's a, semi-definitive version of how this might be played. And I brought it to you, and people seem to really gravitate toward that song. I've had a lot of people say it's one of their favorite songs of ours. And it's really funny to me because, I wrote that song some 11 years ago trying to write a song that people might like at a show like this, and to my memory, it's inspired by one of the darkest times in my entire life. I was on the brink of death, and just kind of, awash in that feeling. And I was sitting there watching the train. I go, I could just write a song about a guy looking at a train. That seems like a thing people could relate to. I don't know if it comes across how incredibly morose and dark the roots of the song are.
I think
Unless
if you
really
scratch a little
it,
bit, on the surface it's kind of happy sounding and it's got a good upbeat rhythm. But my uncle, I think I gave him a CD, and when we met up again, he's like, I love that first song you have on there about the guy who tries to stop drinking but he can't. And it's, I think if you think about the words for more than a second or two, it's, it comes across. It's someone with a dependency.
Yeah.
Whether that's a substance, or we talk about, bringing your love back around, or even just being broke and not having any money. The person in that song is not really having the best time.
No, and I would say of all of our tunes, that I've written for this band, that's the only one that's confessional, but it's from a time where I was writing confessional music, and that is me in that song. I was, on a crazy bender and doing real rough, and it's a very honest statement. And it's just amusing to me because it's the only honest statement I've made in the In-Laws. Everything else I've said is total BS, you know?
That is funny. Yeah, it's a funny story. You know, now I'm the guy singing the song. And, I mean, I don't know if I've ever said this on the record, but that first thing that I do, where I do the I intentionally, almost as if a statement to say, I know where we're coming from as the Johnny Cash tribute band.
Yeah.
Going forward into an original expression, those first notes are supposed to sound like Folsom Prison Blues, and it's about a train, so you get down, 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 down. But then, you know, the rest of it, I just kind of use my own direction. You
know, that goes back to talking about being collaborative in songwriters. When I would play the song, I'd play it much more, you know, upbeat, you know, much faster, which we play it pretty fast sometimes.
Yeah, especially live, we like
you know, it was a real stomp and shout kind of song for me at the time. And to hear you put that Johnny Cash style lick, or, well, I guess it's more of a Perkins kind of riff, but to put that lick at the top of the song like that, my initial reaction was, oh, it's just like Johnny Cash. But I go, it makes a lot of sense because it's like bridging that gap between the Cash Journey days where we were playing Johnny Cash covers exclusively to one of our first songs that we started playing as a duo, original music. It really makes a lot of sense thematically for our own lives to put that in there and to make that nod. And yeah, I mean, it works because it's a great musical idea and it's, you know, tried and true and tested throughout the decades. But on a deeper level, there's like some fun In-Laws lore to that riff, connecting the different eras of the band.
All right. And, you know, that comment is also, you know, we've got the CD we put out. Mm-hmm. We've got the CD Songs from the Woodshed. And that's the first track on there.
Kinda.
Where it sounds a lot more like Johnny Cash. On this album, Songs of Yearning, we've played that song so much and we've grown so much, it actually doesn't really sound like the Johnny Cash kind of reference that originally was. Yeah. We've got a double-tracked, kind of almost overdriven guitar sound with a little extra melody going on, like it's something like this. So we start that way, and it's harmonized, so it ends up sounding. You know, I can't do it all right now. And then I go boom, boom, boom. It kind of slides up. So it doesn't really sound the same at this point. I think if you heard that, you might not think Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Which, you know, again, is just an extension of that story of the band, of coming into our own and taking a risk, saying, you know what, let's take one more step away from this, like, Johnny Cash thing.
Yeah.
And just try to make good music, you know?
Yeah.
That feels good.
Well, I mean, it's funny, too, because, you know, we've got 3 releases under our belts, including this one. So we've got the Songs from the Woodshed and Songs We Love, which is our live album recorded by Ryan Cohen of Robot Dog fame. And then this record, Trains, appears on all 3 of those recordings. Mm-hmm. And if you can kind of hear the 3 different versions of the song, and it's definitely indicative of our kind of evolving sound as we hone in on, you know, what do we want to bring to country music? How do we really carve out our niche? And it's just cool that song, coming from a very different time in my life even, I still get such a kick out of it, you know, having written that song, you know, back almost, I'll say 30 years ago now. No, 10 years ago, you know, 11 years ago, really. It was about 2013, 2012.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
wild.
And people still love it. And, you know, it's kind of, like you're saying, a way to measure our progress. So I think we have to record it every album, actually.
Hey. I'll hold you to it.
All right.
There's a thing that a lot of people have asked us, and I don't think we've ever really given an answer, which is mostly, what is post-outlaw? And I would say it's almost like asking, what is Heatwave? It's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of acceptable answers, too.
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything too conclusive, because just like the songs themselves and a lot of great art, it's how you interpret it. That is the best interpretation.
It's true, but also the artist does have a certain amount of intention and is trying to direct, you know, hopefully compose something that, you know, has an intended response. But at the same time, you don't want to be too heavy-handed with that kind of thing and say, oh, this is the only way to interpret the art, or the only way to define something like post-outlaw. Like, you know, obviously you can break it down, post, after, outlaw. We're talking outlaw country, and I suppose anything really released after, I don't know, 1985, we'll say, could qualify as post-outlaw music.
Maybe strictly chronologically speaking.
Yeah. Which
But
is
I
one
think there's more
interpretation.
to it. Or at least there could be.
If you want to say that, yeah, I would
And
agree.
I probably would. You know, because like you're saying, you break it down. This is after the outlaw country movement.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of stuff did. You know, I'm not going to even start listing off any random examples, but I think there's more of an attitude as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a certain artistic approach, you could say, that goes into being post-outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an extension, but also a deviation.
Yeah, it's a place. It's not so much a lifestyle as it is a sort of just a place you can inhabit, but you don't have to be there all the time. You know, it's something you can kind of take on and off. But it's never that far from us at the same time, which is why I think we're so kind of committed to this. I mean, we both play and love a lot of different kinds of music, but it seems like for the last several years, we've really been just getting deeper and deeper into this. And I don't really see us turning back anytime soon. I feel like we have much further to go. To even say, what is it?
In a way, we're still establishing it.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, there are some precedents. But we are, you know, and it's kind of funny to go from Heatwave to Post-Outlaw, because I think the Heatwave informs a lot of what we're doing with Post-Outlaw, even though it does seem like a totally different context entirely. But I'd be lying if I said that the Heatwave didn't influence Post-Outlaw.
No, I mean, every time we're sitting down to mix something,
Sometimes you'll say, that's pretty Heatwave.
I do.
And I'll agree.
But it is post-outlaw.
Yeah. So,
Even still.
I mean, I think once you hear the record, you'll have a much better idea as a listener what post-outlaw means.
Do you think it's important that we make these distinctions? Because I would say it'd be easier for someone to go, those guys play outlaw country. And I would go, not really, mate, you know? I mean, that was something that was put on those guys. They didn't say, hey, we're making outlaw country.
That's a great point.
Someone made that up in a magazine and said, oh, yeah, the post-outlaw musicians or the outlaw country music. They didn't use the word post.
Yeah, well, not yet.
No, because they were still in the midst of it. But it was a moniker that was, you know, given to them and forced on them. They didn't choose that. You know, they weren't trying to be defined at all. They were trying to just be themselves, however that might have come out.
It's true. You know, they were just trying to follow their own creativity. And I mean, there's a really great, I think it was at Heart-Worn Highways, or maybe just some David Allan Coe documentary where he's reading an article about a show he did. And they're naming off all kinds of possible genre names, including like redneck rock or progressive country or something like that.
Progressive country was one that came up a lot.
And so, yeah, this outlaw country name, I think it was only applied years later after a lot of these records are already put out. Mm-hmm. You know, at the time, they were just calling it whatever they could. It hadn't really become crystallized in the history yet, you know? And by the time they figured out what to name it, they were already kind of post-outlaw.
And it is a sexy marketing term, you know, outlaw country.
Right.
You know, it evokes an image in the listener's mind immediately, I'm sure. But at the same time, you know, I do think it's important that we make a distinction that, you know, we feel like we are trying to carry on that tradition of that outlaw country.
Without being limited.
But we're not, you know, but we're not doing what they were doing. And we couldn't, because that time has passed, and, you know, trying to live in the past is just not viable.
Yeah. I think it turns into, it's a very weird paradox almost, because if you try to be outlaw country, you end up being something that seems so cheesy. But if you try to go beyond outlaw country, then it's almost like you actually are outlaw country.
Yeah.
And maybe that's post-outlaw.
I don't want to say definitively. But
Yeah,
maybe.
me either. I mean, like we said, there's a lot of ways you could take it.